All right, we're going to begin the meeting at this time. Kind of unusual. We've got what? Is this the bride side or the groom? Nobody friends with the bride over here.
It's obviously my side.
It's your side, okay. Well, I said Dan's giving the State of the Union tonight. It might be, these are those that support, and then some will clap and some will not. All right, well, I'm going to open in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege of self-government, the ability to have the freedom to come and to make decisions, to lead, to listen, Lord, to learn, and God, to do our utmost and our best to serve this township and these residents. We pray a blessing on them, your favor, protection on all that serve us and those that are out there in harm's way. We're thankful for them. We're thankful for the peace that our township enjoys. We're thankful for the prosperity and that so many are doing well. We're grateful. Help us to look out for those that are struggling. Open our eyes, let us see them, and let us see our role is not just here at these meetings, but Lord, out there in the community to be hands and feet and to help with compassion. Lord, bless this meeting now tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. And as always, our clerk will take roll.
Everyone present, but Mr. Dolling.
All right, so we have a quorum. And we also have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve our agenda this evening?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion among the board?
I would actually ask that a few of the items be removed from the consent agenda.
All right. Could you identify those for us?
Roman numeral 3 through 6.
Roman numeral. Oh, of number 8 here. Yep. 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3, 4, 5, and 6. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
All right. Do you care where they go in our agenda? Otherwise, I would tend to put them after item 12.
Wherever is fine.
Okay. Actually, I don't mind making them just the very next item after we, let's make them 8A, right? Subparts 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Where did you put them?
I'll put them right after item 8. We'll just put them right after item 8 and we'll make them 8A. How's that? Okay, any other thoughts about the agenda? Okay, with that change, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Approved. Item 7 here. Every year, as you know or maybe didn't know, we asked Dan as our superintendent to give us a State of the Township presentation. Often uses, I think, multimedia. And I expect tonight that's the case as well. Okay. So Dan? Turn it over to you.
Mike, do you mind turning the middle 2 switches? Mind? Thank you. I think people could see a little easier. Is that better? Yeah, it's still going to be hard to read. But I first wanted to say this is my 35th year, and I just recently completed my 12th year as superintendent. And so I'm going to do a somewhat more brief presentation because you've already heard some of the departments, so I don't really want to repeat some of the things they've done. But I want to start on different areas in the township that we haven't heard from yet and talk a little bit about how things work and what we're doing. And the first thing is for assessing, and everyone understands properties have to be assessed. Every once there's lower, but we had about 150 appeals. But most of those appeals, I should say a significant number, were personal property claims and veteran exemption claims. So we really did not have that many appeals, and appointments were not full. And it was quite easy for people to get appointments. Another thing in the assessing department is record all the transfers in the township. And we had about 800 property transfers, 67 were for vacant lots. The assessing department does a sales study, and they also has done one at the county. And that's how the increase that people receive as a whole is determined every year. A lot of times we get a lot of that credit, but it starts out with a sales study that tells us we have to increase X percentage in each class. So if you look at like our residential class, the state will tell us that's the state equalized portion. We must increase that class, excluding new construction, by a certain percentage. And when they give us that, they don't tell us which house we can put it on, but they tell us we have to increase the whole by this certain amount. So that's kind of we have very little latitude with what we can do to be state equalized. To determine how we spread those assessments out to the individual property owners is a state manual that kind of tells us the breakdown. Now that manual has to be adjusted for Georgetown, and that's what's called an ECF. So this economic condition factor is calculated based on the types of homes or the category of homes and the sales that we've seen. And so adjustments to the state manual then are made to this ECF to bring us in line with state equalized value. So they set a value for statewide, but they don't update it every year. They just tell us we have to increase. And so this ECF tells us how we spread it to the different neighborhoods. Now our assessing department does field inspections. And you can tell they did 350 inspections of new construction, and 1,000 inspections were done as part of our annual review. We have to inspect every property every 5 years. And so last year, we made some decisions early for some obvious reasons, not that people wouldn't appreciate inspectors knocking on their door last April and May. There was some heightened concern in April and May and June, so we didn't have any inspectors go out. So we only did 1,000 instead of the 3,500 goal. And so we're a little behind. We'll have to catch up over the next 4 years. Taxable value history. You can look at the township and see a lot. If you look right here, you can see in 2008 where things declined after 2008 and when it dropped to a low point. The blue line is the assessed value or state equalized value. The red line is taxable value. Property taxes are based on the red line. And as now you can see things are expanding, even though home prices are gone up to $2.5 billion for the total value of total property in Georgetown, not just homes. Our taxable value has now just reached just under $2 billion. It's a substantial amount, and you can see things are progressing quite positively in those areas. As part of that, that allowed us to lower the millage again to 2.25, back to where it was in 2012. When it was adjusted up. This chart shows the millage chart going to 5, because 5 is what the voters approved. So the voters approved a millage of 5, but this is what we've been levying. The board has the ability to levy up to what the voters approved, less Headley amendments that have reduced that amount over time. This is a tax comparison chart for the local tax from 3 of our communities. I don't place that in here to show that we should raise ours up to theirs. That is not what this is trying to accomplish. I've had people ask me if that's what really I'm trying to show here. What I'm trying to show is we get people who move from these communities to our community and then, want certain services that we don't offer. And so this chart here is to show the difference of the revenue we're collecting for a typical home. So you'll see it's significant for each home. This is the variance for, a basic home in our communities and what they'll pay in each one for local taxes. The second major source of revenue for the township is revenue sharing. We receive a couple of different types. As you can tell, it's the constitutional revenue sharing. The state legislature can't change that. That's established by the state constitution. We receive a percentage of the sales tax collected in the state based on our population. And when things got a little tough, you can see what they did is they took away the statutory. And when ours increased here, they didn't start giving us statutory till way up to here. And the statutory is what the legislature controls. And so it's not something we can count on. You can see that it was slightly up overall here, but part of that is something new that they did this time and gave us restricted money. Money that could only be spent in certain ways. I think I'm getting close to the camera, sorry. For COVID-related expenses. And so it was, the state decided to withhold some of the normal statutory money so they could have more flexibility in the spending, and then gave us some of the restricted funds. And so they passed that through the state. This is our general fund balance, and you can see some trajectory through the years. I mean, I can tell you, years we built buildings. We built the building you're in right now. We built fire stations. You can see, an ice arena. You can see different things that we built when we built them, and you can see when we built a library for the changes. And we've done something that most governments don't do, is we've saved for the expenditure and then we spent it. You can see our fund balance is right around $8 million right now in our general fund, and that excludes the $1 million we took out from our and put in our stabilization fund. So if you were to look at the actual change from 2019 to 2020, if you include the stabilization, it was about a $42,000 adjustment. So we're very comfortable where we're at. Building and construction. You can see that the overall permits have dropped slightly, actually significantly in 2020. And you can see that the 2021 is not significantly different at this point. And you can see the new home starts here in Georgetown through the years. You can see 2020 was also a significant reduction. Now it's still higher than way back in here during the downturn of 2008. That's when you really saw things drop. But, you're seeing 2020 did affect housing starts. There were still lots of plats approved. You can see lots of lots approved for the future in the last 3 years. These are just a sample of some of the lots or subdivisions that were added, and we have one on our agenda tonight. We also have Victor here if you have any questions that come for the building side. Some of the projects you see for commercial industrial for the last 3 years there's quite a few different projects. It takes multiple years for a lot of these to be accomplished, so you're really seeing a 3-year list here. Elections. Last year we had 4 elections, and some of those elections brought significant new expenses to us for mailing, postage, ballots particularly was a large expense. And COVID-related protection gear was also an expense. We also got reimbursed for a lot of that, but you did see a big expense. In 2021, we have one small election coming up next month for Hudsonville schools, and in 2022 that we anticipate 3. We really don't know what will happen, but that we anticipate those 3 based on our previous experience. So, voters registration, you can see, continues to increase. You're seeing a jump there, and with 39,000 registered voters. 15,000 people are now on our permanent AV list. That means we mail them an application. Intentionally, that's really all it means, is that we send them an application every election. And of course, that adds to our costs. Absentee ballots in 2016 were 7,000, and the governor's election was 6,600. In the last presidential election, we had over 19,000 absentee ballots. You can see it's significant from 2 years ago, basically triple from our governor's election. So each ballot requires us to mail an application, process the application, then mail out a ballot, and then obviously the returns of the ballot. Absentee ballots add significant expense, and you can see with this change, our election costs did go up, and you'll see that on our financial statements. We're going to do a quick switch to water. I know Joel covered these items, but I wanted to mention a couple things. There's a big disconnect when people buy water of what it costs, and I use this slide every time to remind people where they sometimes complain about their water bill and then spend, $2 for a water bottle and don't think a thing of it. And what we charge less than a penny a gallon, and so it's pretty material. And then 25% of the bottled water in America is actual municipal water. So it's just interesting. The utility system, and this is the part that I also wanted to cover a little more, it has to do with how we manage our assets. For the utility system, there's some key principles we want to keep following here, and we want to make sure we know what our assets are. We want to make sure that we look at our forecasting how to repair and plan for them and doing proper maintenance. And also, when it comes to financial planning, make sure we have rates in place that allow us to do the needed maintenance so we're not deferring maintenance because of rate issues. And this chart kind of shows the difference. If you notice the green line here, you pay a little more when you do maintenance, but then you're hoping to avoid the red line where you have a large failure. And that's kind of the goal when we try to do our maintenance and try to keep up with the different items. Oh, this is not going to show a good picture, but that's a nice, we send a camera down a sewer line. It gives us an example of what it looks like. It shows better on my screen, and I can email it to you if you really want to see it. And then after we clean it up and do the repair, it looks a little nicer. And mostly we're concerned about, not appearance, but we want to concern about condition of the pipe, that it's not deteriorating, that it's not allowing water to come into the pipe, that it doesn't belong there from the ground, that we're then paying to treat. Anything that enters the pipe and goes to the plant, we pay for that. We pay to treat, and we want to avoid treating rainwater or groundwater. Some of the things we've seen, as you can see, that is actually running water into a manhole from a hole. So just things that have been in there. It's just a stream of water going in there that we've found to repair. And yes, that is what you think it is. So that is another problem that we have and we continue to work through is illegal sump pump connections pumping into their sanitary sewer. And we want to continue to remind residents, and we've done a lot with inspections to get residents to stop, but when they have a problem with, they don't want to pump their sump pump into their yard and create a puddle for them or something, or put a discharge in. They do this little quick connect into their sanitary sewer, not thinking that's potentially going into their neighbor's basement and flooding and overwhelming our sewer. Our sewer is not designed to handle pump water into it. It is not designed at all, and these can fill up our pipes very quickly. Cemetery columbarium. This is on our agenda today. I wanted to show you a picture when we talk about the cemetery. We currently have 3 of these units, and one of them on the agenda today is to purchase 2 more. And if you can see here, we have we can easily handle 4 more units and maybe a 5th unit right here. And we'll have to look to the future in the cemetery a little bit, because the cemetery, the idea is to have our costs recovered by the use of the cemetery, get a burden on the taxpayers. And so we have perpetual care that kind of helps take care of the care in the future. And our rates have been the same for a little over 4 years now. So we have to look at rates in the future if we want to continue to avoid subsidizing the cemetery in the future. Cemetery rights sold. We talk about rights not for our sales. We don't really sell the land. We sell the right to use it. And you can see that our sales are up 20%, which is our highest sales ever in 2020. We saw a significant change. Burials. We also saw a large number of burials. Burials were up 52, or a 27% increase in burials. And 19 of the increased burials, or 19 of the total burials were COVID related. And so we did have that, but you still have a lot of other burials that were unrelated, or at least as far as we know. There's 19 that we know of. And to mention 2021, so you had of the last quarter, or the first quarter in 2020. So it looks like this trend is continuing. Parks. This is a nice picture when the park looked new. And the park's got a lot of use in 2020, and we're going to have to look at some additional maintenance as the turf is starting to show some wear in a few spots. And there's limited options for us of how to repair that surface. The weather has been terrific in 2020. It was dry. The park's got a lot of use. People were home, more use than ever. And you're seeing now a ton of use in April, which is not normal in our parks. We normally don't even open a lot of the parks, and I should say the facilities, until Memorial Day. But I mean, because you could still have freezing weather. That's why only one bathroom's open at Rosewood, where we have heat. But you're going to see more requests to get us to open those facilities if the weather stays this warm. And so it's hard to know what it will be. You can see things are active. At our senior center, 2020 affected them. They were closed a lot of the year, but they still were involved. They had activity in the beginning of the year. You can see their numbers obviously are down for average users of the facilities and average users together. The memberships declined, and the lunch attendees, but this includes their their pickup, right? The pickup lunches. So you can see the numbers here are somewhat stable because they did those pick up or drop off, I should say it, or pick up lunches. That's right, at the thing where people could come and just pick them up without going into the facility. Transportation numbers are also down. You can see the number of riders are both declined and the number of rides. The fire department, you heard that nice presentation earlier, so I'm not going to elaborate a lot on that. But I did want to mention, if you remember the Lucas device that was here, that life-saving device, our fire department, together with our unit personnel, actually had to save using one of those devices this weekend. So in the last week, it did get used, and someone we believe is alive today because of it. So just want you to know the unit and the fire department working together. And you also heard of our classification. So this is a chart of all the fire departments in Michigan. And we joined this class right here, just to give you an idea, where 1 is the best and 10 is the least. And we don't have our official notification to kind of really make our post, but I just want you to get an idea of the accomplishment to get us down into this level with all the fire departments. There's only one Class 1 fire department in the state, and so we're in a pretty small company when you see where all the departments are. And the fire department is always busy, and you can see our sheriff's deputy there. They work together at accidents. They never really know what they're going to run into, whether it's water somewhere, or water in a ditch, or water in a river. WCET, you can see that our revenues are declining as far as the PEG fees, and so the amount that we're giving them is also declining. Last year we finished a couple of major projects. We finished both the library, which you heard about, and this is 2 of the gateway projects. And Rod, if you can bring up the financial statement. I sent everyone the financial statements. They're also available on our website. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things. If you notice that one of the things we mentioned, we had prepared for a significant drop in revenues from COVID-19. Some initial warnings to us, be as much as a 25% drop in state revenues or 20%, and then after a while it came down to like 10%, was going to be more accurate. We didn't see any drop. We didn't see an increase either, of any significance, but we didn't see any significant drop. And if you'll see here, the fund balance of the township's general fund, in our financial statements, the general fund and stabilization fund are combined for our financial requirements. You can see our fund balance dropped by $42,000 in 2020. And here's a few highlights. The library was completed, and at $11,016,000, so $11,016,000 was the total cost over 3 years. You can see the Baldwin Street and the other entrance projects came in about $860,000. We purchased 2 new fire trucks at $1.1 million, and additional 32 acres of land for $350,000, and we did sell some land for $150,000. This shows our fund balance and the breakdown. Here you can see that million is committed for stabilization. 1.1 million is committed for our 2021 budget, and then that leaves unassigned fund balance of $6.8 roughly million. And then again, our fund balance here is showing the net fund balance of $42,000. Here's the next one. And this shows our budget. We budgeted $15 million in total expenditures, and we spent $11.3 million. In 2020, we basically spent 75% of what was actually budgeted. Now, obviously, the library was the biggest component of that. We also received funds toward paying 2 months of our sheriff bills. So we received that as part of CARES Act funding through the county, so we didn't have to pay for that for 2 months, which was significant. And you also have department heads. Because of initial concerns, we told them to obviously be careful. We want to plan for, potential expenditures we aren't aware of. And then, of course, we had facilities closed, which saved us funds by the closing those facilities. So I think that's it, correct? Any questions?
Anybody? Dan, I appreciate the presentation. I've used a couple of the slides. I know you update them from year to year, and there's always new information, but I've used a couple of those in talks I've had to give, and especially like the one that compares the maybe some of the millage rates and the like. But as you say, sometimes that can be misinterpreted too. But I wondered, Chief, do you know which fire department in the state of Michigan got that one rating?
Grand Rapids. I asked them already today. Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids. Okay. Well, good for them. Good for them. We're shooting for them. Do we catch, Dan, many of these illegal sump pump installations? Because we were for a while, some years ago.
We're not catching
a lot of them cracking down.
A lot at first, and now we targeted we thought was the worst offenders. We still are catching them occasionally, but not near as many.
Okay.
So obviously, 2020 was not the time to ask people to go into their house to inspect them.
Right. Right.
So.
Okay. I had another question here that. No, I don't know. You hear $2.5 billion for the value of our property. You think, well, that's a lot, you know. But then you look at what they're spending and approving at the federal level. You think that's a rounding error, you know, $2.5 billion. But it is increasing. It is a lot of value. You know.
And that's the taxable value, so that's not even the true market value. The true market value would be 6.
Wow. Wow. Anybody else? Well, we've got Dan, John?
Just Dan, thank you. I know you were elected 7 times as treasurer, and now you've used those skills for us and just done an incredible job. And people skills, your rating the last time was perfect, right across the board with everyone. And we just really appreciate you. Thank you for your love of the township.
It is encouraging, Dan. I mean, it's a bravo to you and the staff and everyone, but it's also encouraging to us to be cognizant of those facts, right? Figures, and to be able to answer common questions we receive, to be, I guess, proud ourselves too of running within our means, right? Not trying to overreach. I'd ask for our benefit, if you would, could you put that PowerPoint in an email to us, or a link, I should say?
Sure, I can give it to you.
And consider even posting it to the website. I know it requires a little bit of commentary, and you'll have to think about whether that would be problematic, but I think some people might click through and appreciate some of those slides even without the commentary.
I will email it to you today.
Okay. Thank you. All right, item number 8, communication letters and reports received for information, minus the 4 that we have moved. The rest of them are thus received into the record. And we'll go next to those 4 items, as I said, that were removed earlier, that we'll call 8A. And we'll just call them Roman numerals 3, 4, 5, 6, so we don't get confused. They're the ones from current 8.
No, actually, they were the ones from 10.
Oh, from 10. Consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
My apologies. Okay. Circled the wrong ones. Okay, so then all of the items listed, the item 8 are received for information. And we'll go to item 9, public comments for actions remaining on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight that wishes to address the board on items that are remaining on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the first public comment period of the evening. Now item 10, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the items that have been removed?
I'll make the motion to approve items 1 and 2 of the consent agenda.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. So we'll make these then 10A, Roman numeral 3, 4, 5, 6. And I will turn to Catherine. We'll begin with item 3.
I guess one thing I was concerned about here is, unless I'm just missing something, I was reviewing things that had been done at the Planning Commission, and I'm not seeing where we would have had a preliminary plat approval request and a final preliminary plat approval at the same time. I wasn't seeing a difference, and I wasn't seeing where in the meeting minutes that was even done, but that both would be moving forward to us tonight.
It has happened in the past. basically the developer is taking a risk, but this plat has been presented many in the past and not built, so they had some further advance. But basically, they come with the first plan and present it to us for the overall layout, and usually they want to get that approval before they develop the utility plan. Now, if the developer wants to take the risk and pay for all that development, and we don't like the layout, that's a risk they're taking. But, you know, doesn't mean we can't do it. This means they've taken a risk to say, okay, you're going to not have these lot layouts, but you've developed the street in this particular way. This particular one is somewhat limited in their options, so I think they obviously had more, and I think they're ready here to address, so if you have other questions on it, so.
Well, I guess before we move on to that, I guess, is there something that I just missed in the Planning Commission meeting minutes that indicated that both essentially were going forward at the same time? Because I wasn't seeing that in the...
The Planning Commission doesn't approve the second step.
Oh, that's, okay. That explains why that wasn't in there, so. So I guess the other thing for me, in reviewing all of the attachments, and again, maybe I just missed something, but I kept looking over and over again, was this, and I don't see where my notes are in front of me, this is 11 different parcels of the same plat? Is that it? Yes. Okay, I just want to make sure I was catching that correct. I wasn't seeing where it was broken down what that looks like. Usually we have the plat map that has indication of where all those are, but in the documents that were attached from the Planning Commission meeting and then between that and what's in here, I wasn't even seeing where that is. I saw an overall.
If you can bring it up here a minute.
That's showing the 11?
Right. I don't know if you can count them out there, but there's 12.
There's 12? Oh, there are tiny numbers on there. Okay, that just looks a lot different than what we had been seeing before, so sorry that I missed that. And then I guess I think it was, I think this was my last question. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right notes here. There was something, now I don't remember if this was something, what the date was of the original time this was sent through, but the July 12th, 2019, was that the original time it was submitted? So there was the streetlight petition, and I wasn't on the board then, so I guess, where does that sit in terms of process? Because it doesn't look like there's an additional document updated or submitted for that, and then there'd be a reference as a hearing. I'm just not sure where we would be at that then.
As far as for streetlights?
Well, right. I guess in terms of having a special assessment hearing, if that's needed, or where that would be.
We haven't utilized that feature for quite some time now.
Okay.
So that's why we haven't been having hearings with residents, because we haven't done any special assessments for streetlights for quite a few years.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know that we didn't have it. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing that. So
we've basically we had all these hearings, and certain properties were all included. We stopped levying the millage, but we're still making all the new developments sign the agreement so that they would be included if the board ever chose to go back. But it's been quite a few years now. We probably could stop.
Okay. I think, yeah, as far as those two items, 3 and 4, I had to pause and reading Roman numerals. Those were my only questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to.
We can circle back and maybe touch on each of them after we've hit all 4.
You can vote on them.
And vote on them individually.
Yeah,
right?
now you have to, yeah.
Well, why don't we vote them individually? We'll start with item 3 then. Approval of the layout of the preliminary plat of Sugar Maple Estates. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion on that item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, item 10A3 then is passed. Item 10A4, is there a motion to approve the final preliminary construction plat of Sugar Maple Estates?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, again, any further discussion on that item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay. That item is passed, and we'll now go to 10A5, having to do with the farmland leases there by Maplewood Park. And Catherine, I'm going to look to you to address questions and concerns.
Yeah, and I know we have talked about this at prior meetings, so if I'm misremembering, I apologize. But the last couple of times we had talked about this, I don't think we'd ever seen an actual lease. With it, there being, with the type of situation it is, it's supposed, such a lease would have to be in writing. Is there not a written lease?
There's a contract that we use.
There's a what?
There is a contract that we use.
So there is something in writing for him using the land?
I think one of the questions asked too was about the duration and the ease of getting out of it. I don't recall what we.
It's an annual lease that expires October 31 of each year, unless they have a late harvest. Follow through.
Did the services committee review that lease then?
I believe they did when we first started. 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so it's been a lease that has been used with him by us, but after we acquired the property then?
Yes, so for farmland area 1, the 3rd year, we're using that lease. And I modified that same lease, switched it over to accommodate farmland area.
Is this the first year for that? I don't know what you have access to on that computer, but is it possible to have you email those? I don't know if this would be possible, but if we could maybe to move the vote to later on that. I just don't feel comfortable voting on something I haven't even seen, so I don't want to necessarily abstain, but if it's possible for me to review it, and then we could vote on it at the end of the meeting.
There's a motion before the board that's been seconded. Are you making I guess.
I'm not saying that we
amendment?
can't move.
We haven't.
There hasn't been. Oh, my apologies. Okay. All right.
Well, and I'm not saying we can't vote on it at all. I'm just asking if, I don't know, can you mention something earlier when I mentioned about emailing you, if you had, I don't know if you have access to doing that.
I didn't have my laptop with me then.
Oh.
I can email it right now if you want.
Or is the question whether you could call it up on the screen? Might that be?
Well, if you could email it to me, then I can just try to, I'm assuming it's not like a 100-page contract that you have.
And it might also work to throw it up on the screen as well.
Want to just go to the next item if you want
Sure.
to review that? Is that what you're
Sure.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
While you're working on that, Rod, then let's go to item 10A, Roman numeral 5, that has to do with the columbarium units, the possible purchase of 2 more of those. How about I ask for a motion and a second, and then we'll hear discussion. Is there a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 2 more columbarium units from the low bidder, which is also the company that we've used previously, to be placed on the existing pad.
So moved.
Okay, so it's been supported. Discussion.
You just said to accept the bid from the low bidder. Was there, I didn't see anywhere in there where there was another bid.
There's 3 on that.
Am I losing my mind? Is it
Salem Stone, Windsor 48, and Premier.
And part of the reason that we went with Premier is because then they would match the ones that are already there. because that's the same company. And it was the low bid.
Double benefit then.
Double benefit.
Aesthetics and cost.
How many pages? How many pages?
I can easily see us running out of room there in not too long too.
I think it's such an important service, and I think it's such an important service, and it seems like more and more people are moving in the direction of cremation as the years go on, and I don't know if that's generational or what it is, but I can see us needing more of those in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely trending, isn't it?
That's a question about it. Yeah. Is it possible to get more? You know, we're going to have an option, or we're going to have it come where, say, in 5 years we can't get the same ones anymore. Does it make sense to get 4?
They would happily sell us more. It would just, they wouldn't be used at our current pace for 5 years. And so that's kind of why we first bought one, and then we had the same question with our shipping. It's cheaper so much if we bought 2. So that's why we bought 2 last time, and that lasts us quite a few years, and I think this could last us another 5 years. There is a few issues that we like not to have too many out there because people like the top row. And so when the top row is gone, they go to the second row, and then when that's gone, they go to the third, and they go, oh, you're going to have, if you have all of them, you're going to have all the top row gone this year, and then you're going to have, you're going to sell it by row across instead. But so I mean, that's just a side benefit, but yes, there is preference on which row they're in. So.
Any other comments on that particular motion?
I think I was actually confused about what we had in front of us, and I was thinking that my questions are based on confusing 2 different estimates as one company. So that kind of, I'm just looking to see, but I think that's what created the confusion for me. Yeah, that's actually, all my questions actually are resolved by understanding that now, so I apologize for that as well.
No problem.
Are you comfortable then with us voting on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And item 10A, Roman numeral 6 is passed. We'll come back to 5 later in the meeting. We'll go on then to item 11. This is the time for a public hearing regarding the issuance of bonds by the Economic Development Corporation of the Township of Georgetown for Sunset Manor, Inc. This allows Sunset Manor to issue tax-exempt debt and save some interest. And actually, we went through this cycle previously, and things slowed a bit with them, and they have to come back and get a renewal again or get an approval. I saw this past week that they've begun leveling earth out there, and it looks quite a bit different already sitting outside that space in front of Waterford. I think they're starting with a second structure on their parking lot. If you've ever seen, they've got indoor parking, and they're going to go up a level. And then once that's completed, as I understand it, then they're going to build approximately 64 units, I believe. 62 units, whereas I think the current one is over 80. So it'll be pretty good size, 4-story again. Pretty big endeavor, and they've been very successful out there. But is there a motion to open a public hearing then on the issuance of these bonds?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Anyone from the public here tonight to speak to this particular matter? And you're welcome, of course, if you have a vested interest to speak as well, but if you'd rather just see if there are questions by the board, that's fine as well. All right. Seeing no one, and no one's raising their hand virtually, okay. And then is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor of closing our public hearing, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed, and at this point then, someone willing to make the motion to approve the resolution for the issuance of these bonds by the EDC.
Motion. Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution as presented.
And support.
All right, discussion about these bonds. This, I think we all know and have learned that it doesn't put any onus or liability or potential liability on the township. So that's obviously the main concern from our standpoint.
I guess I'm not understanding how, just by saying in our wording that it doesn't, how doesn't it?
We are not the obligor, as I understand it, under these bonds.
Right. We're only approving the issuance. We're not the obligor. We're not obligated in any way as a revenue source for the bonds. They have to have both they have to guarantee them. Basically, it's a loan for them working, and the guaranteeing is their credit worthiness. And Steve can probably address their side of it, but the proposal is reviewed by their attorney, and then it's reviewed by Township Council to confirm that we have no obligation whatsoever. And these kind of flow through the EDC. They just need our name with the EDC to do the tax exempt status part of it. And so that's all we're lending to them. And the law allows us to do that through our EDC. So the township just has to approve each one.
Haven't done it too often either, have we, Dan? When was the last one? Was
the last phase for them.
Okay.
And the time before that was the previous phase for them. We haven't done any issuance of anything other than Sunset Manor for 35 years.
You know, Steve's all dressed up and excited to be here. You want to share your vision with us and how we should buy your bonds?
All right.
I don't know if they're even available for the public. I think
And this is Christine Motzke back here. She's our new president and soon to be CEO in the next few months. And the project's really exciting. We tend to use tax exempt bonds for everything we do so that we can run at a little bit lower margin because we are not for profit. So it's a 62 unit development. We'll have a chapel there, a fitness center, a few other things. And to Dan's point, so the city is, and if Craig is on and he wants to jump in at any point to discuss. Okay, so basically the city issues them, the bank is the purchaser, and if we were to go bad on these bonds, which we wouldn't, the bank is holding these bonds actually, and they're going to take our property from us, and then they'll deal with it from there. But like Dan said, without getting too much into the legal, the city would not be on the, or the township would not be on the hook at all for that. So.
But Craig Hammond was on council for Sunset. Under the EDC Act, as a matter of state law, the EDC bonds are not an obligation.
I was going to say that next.
Words right out of your mouth.
Well, you can still cite the chapter and verse if you like.
Well, I mean, I think good is good on that. Any questions on that?
I have a question. So I guess this is just on the notice, but I would assume this would go into the resolution itself. But in the middle of it, it talks about being that it would be not to exceed 75 million. I'm trying to make sure I'm putting enough zeros in there when I say that. And then, but it says that the project is not estimated to exceed 40 million. So the first part of my question is, I'm just missing at why you do a bond for 75 then.
Sure. There's three parts to it that we'll be doing. One is a refunding of bonds we've previously done. That's, I'm just going to use round numbers, call it 15-ish million. The construction is 40 million on this part, but there's construction related to it that we're putting equity in as well. So it just kind of covers the whole of the cost, and then there's issuance costs and everything on top of the construction numbers you see. So you add it all up, there's a little cushion in there. We probably won't get to 75 million, but you make a little bit of cushion so we don't bump up to anything, and we have to come here again and say, hey, can we issue bonds for 500,000 more?
Okay. And then the second part of the numbers part, it talks about the refunding all or part of the outstanding principal. And that is that the last one that you were talking about, repaying some of those from the prior project? So then that talks about not exceeding 32,000, but you just mentioned it's going to be closer to, or 32 million, but you said it's closer to 15 million?
Yeah, it's closer to 15 million. The whole of that bond issuance is about, the balance is at approximately 32 million right now. There's two banks involved with that, and we're only refunding a piece of it. So
okay.
I think that's why it's listed that way.
Okay. So it's not that 40 million and 32 million is trying to get to the 75 million?
No, because there's issuance costs in there too where,
Okay.
yeah.
It's not $3 million of issuance costs.
It's
not $3 million of issuance costs, I would hope.
No, but there's there's capitalized interest that goes in there, and I'm trying to remember how exactly it's laid out in that resolution, but there's many parts of this where you pick out, okay, it's $40 million for the hard cost of construction. There's issuance on it. There's refunding of current debt. There's a temporary piece that gets paid down.
And what was it that's being, I guess I was thinking it said something about something being sold, but that's not necessarily correct. The disposition proceeds, the 600,000 that it was referencing?
Oh, we are paying down a piece of the EDC bonds from 2009, about 600,000. That's completely being disposed of.
Oh, okay. The wording of it made it more.
If we're refunding $15 million, that piece of the bond would have been $15.6 million. We're completely paying the 600, refunding $15 million of it.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Refinance all outstanding debt. The decision was made to keep approximately half of the Series 2014 bond outstanding. The actual size of the Series 2021 bond will be closer to $42 million.
Oh. Does that modify what we should be doing in terms of a resolution then?
But my understanding is the resolution says up to, so it gets them up to that, but they can do whatever below it.
I realize that he's your counsel, not ours, but if he wanted to address that,
Yeah, he can certainly address it. Yeah.
I mean, even I don't need him necessarily. We've had some technology issues. Even if he just said, it's fine being 75 million, or it's less than what we thought, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is. I can say it's fine to leave it at that because we're not going to borrow 75 million if we don't have to. So for us and our banks and for the township, I don't think anybody should mind with it being up to 75 million, even though we're skipping on 15 million of that EDC refunding. So.
Okay.
Craig, do you have any additional comments for that? Oh, Craig, can you hear me?
It's clearly a not to exceed. So we change.
Sorry, Craig.
More.
Go ahead. Yes, there you go.
Okay. So, again, in the discussion, we went through a project plan proceeding the year before. The numbers were, at the maximum amount that you might possibly use. So we're going forward with this, asking for this approval of not to exceed 75 million, even though, in fact, we're only anticipating issuing approximately $42 million of bonds. So we'd like you to approve the resolution, the hearing, the way it's been presented, and there's no harm in the fact that the authorized amount is going to be greater than what's actually issued.
So this gives you that management flexibility in case you need it. And there's no liability to us or the taxpayers at all.
There's not, no.
Thank you.
Steve, how many of these units are already spoken for?
We have, let's see, I think it's 39 right now on those 62 units, and you've probably seen we're building villas in the back as well, close to the lake. We have 14 of those 20 sold. So we're in the process of building all 20 right now at various stages. I think 6 are complete right now, and another 4 will be complete within the month, and then I think they're going to all be constructed by the end of October over on the villas. And then this project, the 62 up front, that's an 18-month deal. So we should be done with that September, October-ish 2022. Start moving people in. So had very good interest in it. A point that Chris always makes is we haven't been able to have people in our building and show them all the cool things that are going on at Waterford, and they're still putting deposits down and ready to go. So we're very excited to get it going. Well, it has started. You saw the dirt moving, so.
Yeah, right. Good. Anything else for Steve or among the board? Any other further discussion?
I've been walking through with my grandson, and it's just beautiful. Terrific setting. The buildings look awesome. It's a great place.
Great, glad to hear it.
And I think that all of the important work that Sunset does for the community, because all of those people that are interested in, or a bulk of those people that are interested in moving into those new units are likely then going to be selling homes in the community, and we know that homes in our community are in very high demand. And so as far as community turnover and getting houses on the market and stuff, that is exciting too. You know, people want houses in West Michigan, and if people that are interested in moving into your units as soon as they open up are currently homeowners, then that's good for our community as well.
All right.
I have a question, not for Steve, but just
Okay.
in general. How much are we talking in our attorney fees to review that?
I don't know the number, but I will tell you they are paying it.
Okay, and that was my main concern.
I get to pay mine,
I'll take it
yours,
personal.
the banks. I get to pay everybody.
Hey, well drafted. Do you want it? No.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the EDC meeting
Yeah, next Monday.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Chris, nice
Thank you.
to meet you. Thank you. Okay, if everyone has had their questions answered, let's take a roll call vote on that one.
Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
Mr. Treasurer.
Yes.
Mr. Schwam.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Ms. Henry.
Yes.
And the clerk is a yes as well.
All right. That passes. We'll go now to item number 12, water replacement at 8th Avenue Park. Coming out of the Services Committee, there's a request for a motion to approve the replacement of the water service at 8th Avenue Park. Does someone wish to place that motion before the board?
I'll make that motion.
And support.
All right. Discussion, additional information anyone wishes to provide?
We had talked about this in services, and so John and Ryan correct me when I get something wrong, because I undoubtedly will, but one of the things that we noticed when we looked at the quote from DeWitt Trenching is there isn't kind of a final big number of what we expect this to cost. It's more hourly rate. Something we discussed is that it's hard to quote out because of the work that they're going to be doing. There's just no way to really know exactly how many hours it's going to take, but I believe in services the number was about 15,000. Is that accurate? It's kind of where we're guessing it will be. 15 to 20 is where we're kind of guessing it will be. When the work was done originally, it wasn't necessarily the right product, and so it's had a number of repairs, and we're at the point where you can keep repairing something that's bad and incurring the cost of the repairs, or you can just take a deep breath and replace it with a product that would be a better fit. DeWitt Trenching, Rod and Joel have both worked with them before and feel good about going this route. And this new line will be bored across the lake, under the lake, that's true, right? Under the lake instead of around it, because that straight line path, while it might be more labor intensive to put it in, is more economically feasible because it's a straight line instead of a big roundabout to get to where the water needs to be. Is that an okay overview? What else did I miss?
Describe, Becky, if you would, remind us of what water services are provided there. Obviously, there's not a splash pad or something of that nature,
There's
but
bathroom that we're trying to get water to, right?
fountain, or I don't recall if there's, yes, there's a drinking fountain. Is there as well? Okay. Such a beautiful park. And
It is.
so out of the way. So missed, I'm afraid, sometimes.
So the water is located in this neighborhood right here. We're tapping it right here. So currently we're doing the roundabout approach, and that's the line that keeps breaking, and we're having to find it, repair, and send it every year. So now the approach is to go like this. They can bore it and get it there more directly as opposed to going through it. We also have a spillway here they have to work around to make this happen. So that's the goal to get to here. People see the well right here. That is nothing to do with, that's for sprinkling. And I know we've had some issues there where the water table is so high it looks like it's leaking. but it's really just the water coming up out of it. We think that's solved for now, but that's part of the issue. But this is to serve the building and, to give potable water at the building.
What was this thing that you said was an issue that sometimes you have to work around on the side of
There's a spillway here that if the lake gets too full, or the creek, there's a spillway to allow water to pass to prevent some flooding. But in normal conditions, we don't want the creek water into the lake because the quality of water in the creek is not as good as what we'd want to have in the lake. So during flooding conditions, it can spill over here, but during the rest of the time, it keeps a barrier, and this is the barrier.
But that spillway becomes problematic when the water line is going around the lake because it has to navigate that spillway as well. Besides being a longer distance, it has to navigate that spillway also.
Did we ever get a quote to replace that whole line? I know we talked about going straight across.
This is
Did we ever get a quote?
That's what we were asking for originally with a quote from them, and they're suggesting this would be significantly cheaper. Is why they proposed us going this way. Just to show
time and materials, right?
Just like that, because we're going 750
Good.
1,400. Time and material.
And that was a question I had. I'm not on utilities, but my questions after the meetings were, they use PVC, which is not the right product to use for water supply. It doesn't hold up to freezing, and I'm not sure what the depth is, but my concern would be if there was a shot, well, it sounds good. If there were a leak in the future, you can't repair a leak underneath the lake. But they're using HDPE, and Joel's confident with it. Rod's confident with it. They said around 50-year life expectancy. So I think it is the way to go. My other question was, how much more would it be if we jumped up to like a 3-inch or a 4-inch, just possibly service a splash pad maybe 10 years from now and not have to pay another 15 to 20 grand to run another 2-inch line to supply a splash pad? Would it make more sense to do it now? But the issue was more of if it's too big a pipe, you don't have that flow keeping it moving, so the water gets stagnant. So it's worth investigating just in case, but
fortunately that's one park where you can still swim, thankfully. I hope that continues. Not that I don't love splash pads. I know how much you love them, but hopefully it remains swimmable, and I wouldn't think of that as a likely candidate for a splash pad, but it doesn't hurt to.
Yeah, was it last year that had an E. coli problem on 8?
I don't know if it was
It was a real dry summer. I think it was because it was dry.
We did have one time where, we had some transmission from the water too, and that's frequently our culprit. But yes, we've had another time where it's been there.
I believe a number of the homes have hooked up to sewer. I think that was a problem. And then, yeah.
Down from the farmland.
Real high E. coli, incredible.
And geese too, because did we talk about in services years ago about
I feel like, in the last couple of years we had talked about geese being part of an E. coli. Like we had to close it because the water level was low from a dry summer mixed with, like Michael said, geese, right? It's been a few years.
We'll get a referral from Sunset for the geese lady, right? This is the one with a little boat and stuff.
So I just have a question in terms of the proposal that was put together here. Am I to read this correctly that it's essentially $200 an hour, that you're paying $75 an hour for the person to run the machine, but then the actual running of the machine is $125 an hour? Or am I not reading that right?
That's correct. You're paying $75 an hour for the person, $25 an hour.
Okay. And so I'm not even going to attempt to do what the math would be, but based on that, plus the material charge that we're seeing, which is I'm assuming a linear foot there, and I guess there's some pieces that are just each, but it's with the material charges plus that $200 per hour is where you got to the 15 to 20,000. Okay.
Without any major complications that they're going to run into some.
Okay. And what, I guess, the $16 per foot plus materials, how does that, is that that must be different from the one, or the 200 then per hour? What is that for, I guess?
So that's for the pipe that they're pushing through. So 750 feet of that.
Okay, and so plus the additional at the bottom where it says material charge, those are just additional materials on top of, maybe they're just saying it's like the main material is being used? Is that why that's not itemized with the rest of the materials?
All right. 16 per foot is boring plus material. Material charges are.
Oh, okay.
On each side, they have to do some excavation. And so there's the prices for that, but then there's also the price of boring the pipe through.
Okay, so it's essentially like two types of labor going on plus the materials, and that total is the 15 to 20,000 that you think it would be.
Because if you look at just 750 feet at $16 per foot, that's 12 grand right there of the overall cost.
Oh wow. Okay. That's the bulk of it then.
Mm-hmm.
I just really had questions. I wanted to hear more about how it came out in committee, so that was, I'm good as far as my reason why I wanted it out of consent agenda.
I'd say the other good part too is that park we charge entrance. And usually it's around about $20,000 a year making entrance fees from.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it changes each year a lot on weather.
Oh, I would expect this year it's going to be a heck of a lot more if it stays like this. Beautiful.
I encourage people to enjoy that park. It is beautiful.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Maplewood Park's my favorite, so.
That's a great one too. I tell you, when I go out and I speak with other townships, or I speak at events where there are other leaders, like, no one has the parks we have.
I picked this community, okay, so my husband gets some credit, but not a ton. I picked this community based on, and primarily the parks and the different organizations that are here and that kind of thing, but, we have 4 kids who were younger then when we were looking, but we drove around and looked at parks and all the different, like Byron Center or whatever, all the communities that we were narrowing down to, and this community really stuck out. It was actually this park that we're talking about plus the Maplewood Park that kind of sold me on, what this community is all about and what it has to offer, and just driving up and you see just people showing up and having fun together, or having a pickup game of basketball or whatever it is. So really great way to let our community shine.
And I should clarify that too, is it's a non-resident fee. So there's no charge for residents.
First time I was here, we technically were still living in the hotel, so we had to pay to get in. I'm like, wait, it's not our fault we can't get in our house.
Many as you can get in the car though, put them all in there. All right, all the motions before you. There's no further comment. All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And item 12 is passed. Item 13, our second public comment period. I'm sorry.
Item 5 yet?
Excuse me?
Item 5.
That's right.
Back to 5.
That's right. Going back then to the leases, which was 10A Roman numeral 5.
I'm good at multitasking, but I would ask that if we're jumping right to that maybe we take like a 2-minute break to let me finish looking at it, because I was trying not to not listen and read at the same time.
Thoughts among the board?
You can go to public comments too if you wanted to at least get those things going too.
Right.
Does that work?
Sure. No one will fault you for reading while they comment.
I was going to say I did have a couple questions too that I could ask while we're.
Okay. You mean during discussion time, or
about the lease? About the lease.
Sure.
Is it liability in that contract? I've never seen it either. Could you email it to me? I'm not going to look at it tonight, but liability insurance is on there? Okay, looks like a $1 million per occurrence. They're insuring to.
It's important to note where we kind of started for looking for a lease. If to us it was pay a contractor to mow, or he pays us to farm and we don't have to pay a contractor to mow. So that's kind of where we started as a board before, 2 years ago when we were first looking at what to do with this property. So it wasn't like we were shopping around thinking we were going to farm this forever. It was like, let's keep it mowed until such time the board wants to do something different. And, we talked about with the one property using it with the airport as creating a wetland. And until we did that, we wanted to keep it mowed. We were advised it was wise in our part to keep it that way. It would be better to maintain and better to get our plans approved if that was the case. So that's where we started. And so, hey, he's mowing it for us is kind of how some of the feeling is. So I just want you to know the perspective of where the board started with us 2 years ago.
Yeah, I guess my primary concern is just liability. If somebody gets hurt by farm equipment and now the other contracts with the worm and the natural farm place, the same thing with them contract, $1 million liability. Okay, perfect.
Personal injury, one accident.
I appreciate the short-term nature of the lease, because when we're ready to do something, whether an additional walking path, which people do love, or whatever, that we won't have to wait a long time to get out of the lease. We can circle back to this, though. Why don't I open the public comment period, the second one. Anyone here tonight who'd like to speak to any issue, whether it was something we've talked about tonight or any other issue that's on your mind, feel free to step forward and address the board, identify yourself and where you live, and you've got 3 minutes. Well, sir, do your best.
Hey, my name's McCloskey, and I live on Baldwin Street. There's a new 36 in Baldwin behind the pizza place. There's going to be a new gas station put in. There's only one driveway that's on Black Star Street. That is a private street. How can they put something that's not open to the public?
This isn't a question and answer time, unfortunately, but we will be glad to talk to you about that this evening yet. I want to make sure you get your full 3 minutes if there's anything else you'd like to bring up.
Well, that's gas station is being processed to being built now. I mean, they're excavating. They've moved stuff in today. And the people behind it tell me that's a private street. So if there's only one driveway that is on that street, so how are people from the drive going to get in and out of the gas station? I have no deal if they want a gas station, but you're going to be driving on private property. How do they allow something like that? See, and that's what I don't understand. Because the driveway going out, you'd have to go out through Subway and Revive, and those are all belong to the businesses. So there's something there that the planning commission, whatever it did, and you don't build a gas station in the middle of a block. It's always on a corner somewhere. I think the planning is, whatever they've done hasn't looked into it enough. But that's poor, to me, that's poor planning. Put a gas station in the middle of a lot.
Klasky? Henry?
Mike Henry, 7194 Michael Drive. Really my question is for Danny. When you were talking about and I know you don't have to answer it right now, but you were talking about the AV applications. You were saying that there was a high expense. There was like 19,000 that were sent out, I think is what you said. We got those, but we never requested them. So I would imagine there was been a lot of people that didn't request them and got them too. So I'd like to know how we got an application for one, each of us, when we never requested them. So, thank you.
2 words, Jocelyn Benson. All right, anyone else?
Gosh, the opportunity with the new CEO of Sunset here and her CFO spoke. I was wondering if she'd want to have an opportunity to address the board, introduce herself. I'm a teacher, so I do this stuff.
Hello, I'm Chris. I go by Chris Motsky, and I've been with Sunset for 18 years. I started out at Brookcrest as a recreational therapist, and later became the administrator there, and then moved over to Sunset about 10 years ago as the chief healthcare officer. My goal at that point was really to allow our seniors to age at Sunset. I don't know if many of you remember, it's always been a great place, but we used to have to ask people to move on to a higher level of care as they grew older and more frail. And so my role had really been to allow people to age in place there at Sunset and at Waterford and take care of them in their homes so they weren't having to leave to...
So like Brookcrest or Rose Garden?
Yeah,
a couple
go
years?
to Brookcrest,
Yeah.
which they're all great places, but who wants to move in the last year of their life? So that's what we've done. Over the past 10 years, we've made some great strides in that. And we now we started out with 40 assisted living beds there at Sunset, and now we're doing about 120. So I love this community. I used to live in Jenison, right a minute away from here, and love Sunset and the organization, everything it stands for, and taking care of this community. So, do y'all have questions for me?
I've known Chris for 12 years and they're in great hands.
Yeah. It's easy to do when you love it, and everyone's got good intentions, and you just want to take care of people in the right way. So.
My dad was there for 9 years, and your people are awesome, and they bring their faith with them, and you prolonged his life.
That's great. That's great to hear. And yeah, we are blessed to have our staff, I would say, are there for a ministry, not just a job, and that's really what makes it special. So, great place to be. Thank you for your partnership with us too, and we always enjoy getting to come here and see everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
If you ever want to know what's going on in the community, go there like on a Monday morning when it's not COVID, grab a donut, and you will hear everything there is to know about the township and how it should be run. And you learn a lot. Learn a lot in an hour. All right. Anyone else during our second public comment period? Seeing none, we'll close. Do we have anyone raising their hand virtually? Okay. Then we'll close that second public comment period and go to item 14, discussion and general information among the board. Does any board member have anything they wish to bring up among the board for general discussion or for information?
Well, I don't know if you wanted to, but I did finish going
I
through.
keep forgetting, Catherine. All right, back to the 10, I've got it memorized now. 10A, Roman numeral. Oh, I don't. Roman numeral 5. 5. Thank you.
We won't hold it against you.
Okay. Like Catherine, when you've seen a number of these, you can scan them pretty quickly, can't you? And you know what to look for.
Yeah.
Did you see something that snared you there, or anything that gives you?
I just had one last question because you had sent over one contract, Rod. Is it literally the same except for the exhibit?
Yeah, and changes the size.
And the dollar amount? Okay. Yeah, then I'm good.
Okay.
I just felt like I was doing a disservice to the township if I was going to vote on it and not having ever, because I'm new to the board, so.
Sure. No, appreciate it. Yeah, you had not seen that lease before, and it wasn't linked into this, so. Very good then. So item 10A5, is there a motion to approve of those farmland leases mentioned therein?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Any further discussion among the board on that item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, those leases are approved. And now we'll go on to item 14, discussion and general information among the board. So anyone?
I was going to say, I believe that development on the corner of 36 and Baldwin is a PUD, correct? That's why they're allowed to.
Yes, that was
PUD gives them more
2000,
flexibility.
The gas station was actually approved in 2006 by the board after they had public hearings. It's been quite a few years before they finally actually started building that particular phase. And there's easements on the private streets. It was all designed for them access. The whole goal of planning was to control access around 36 and Baldwin to allow less entering the interchange where people are backed up and sudden movements there, so you have more control away from the intersection. to make the intersection safer. If you're going to those businesses, yes, it's a little bit more inconvenient because you can't quite pull in directly, but your places of pulling in and out are more controlled and they're further away from the intersection to make it safer for 90+% of the people who are not going there. And so that's really the goal of the planning, was not to get into that spot, but the goal of the planning was to make it safe for everyone going by that spot.
What corner is this on?
36 in Baldwin, the northwest corner.
But is it the, which,
Northwest?
Right behind the car.
oh, it's like on their, okay.
Yeah, there's a good grass area right
Okay.
next to what's the school.
Even back in 2006, it was designated gas station, restaurant on the corner, the residential behind it. It was all planned back 15 years ago now.
Okay, so it's just continuation of the original
Yes.
design for that.
That last building was not built. They waited to build that one.
Okay. Well, it's a great thrift store over there. So.
Mr. Henry's comment earlier, I think I'm right that the Secretary of State sent them to everyone on the voter rolls.
Well, there's a lot of
whatever
different
we
things
might
that
have
happened at different elections, but yes, the Secretary of State ordered it. Then Ottawa County came in and did Ottawa County at one point for certain elections. But yes, there was a lot of them sent out to people who didn't request them. But part of that is what beefed up the number of people overall who signed up to get them in the future. So yes, it did cause some confusion when they sent those out for people who didn't know they were registered, particularly, was also some issues. So
I know I received one for someone who hadn't lived in my house for 20 years. Still lives in the township, but doesn't live in the house.
Well, what's interesting to me is that when Mike showed them to me in the mail, it actually said our P.O. box that we have not had in, well, we stopped using that when we moved into the last house, so close to 10 years. And I couldn't even figure out how we received it. So.
Yeah, those were not our mailing list. It's a state voters list, so a lot of people register when they change their driver's license or do something with the state, and that triggers our information. There are rules when people leave the township, and like if you go like to a deployment or leave the country, you're still registering your last address here, and that does cause some confusion for people maintaining their last address in Georgetown. I'm not saying that's in your case, I don't know, but it can have that where they left the area and it's never been removed from the rolls because they're still active as their last known address. It's particularly for military, where people hit the military, they're last registered there, and you see the family.
Well, for us, we're registered to vote here.
No, I mean yours. I was answering his question. Sorry.
How would we, I guess I don't even see, like you can look yourself up on Secretary of State for the last, whatever it is, 9 or 10 years, looking at them like you're going to remember any better than I am on the dates, but you don't even see our P.O. box listed, so. There's
one other thing that some of the mass mailing services do, and I don't just speculate on your situation because I don't know. We didn't trigger the mailing, but some of the mass mailing services do address correction. And so we have this for our utility bills. For example, if we send out a utility bill, but they put in a corrected address, it fixes it and then prints the right address on there and then mails it based on that address. And so I don't know your situation. I'm just speculating as where an address like that could come from. If it's in the post office as a forwarding address or if it's in the post office some type of triggered address.
Are those like Ryan questions? I mean, like who do you talk to in those cases?
So I will say in goal setting, that's going to be one of my things. I want to really make sure on the Georgetown Township side that our voter rolls are clean. I want to go through and clean it. It's not going to happen by the May election, but perhaps that's a little quick. I didn't even know we were going to do that.
Recall.
You understand, cleaning is a lot of it is out of our purview.
Exactly.
The strict rules of how long they have to stay there. There's verification we have to do before we can remove a name. And the state, without picking who or picking why, they changed the voter's registration requirement in your driver's license to a default, please register me to vote. So it used to be check this box to register. Now it's check this box to not register. And so people who would not be eligible and apply for a driver's license, if they're not diligent enough when they're applying and check that box, they're being registered. Okay, so you don't have to be eligible to vote to get a driver's license. And so there are some occasions, and it's very minor. I'm not saying it's affecting things. I'm not even saying that people voted. I'm just saying that triggered people to get registered without their knowledge, particularly because they didn't go through the process and check a box that says, I don't want to be. And so they were automatically registered. And I think that was one of the things you saw in the Georgetown where they put it on, I'm not a citizen and I'm registered, I got an application. They didn't get a ballot, they got an application. And they got it from one of the state services that because they actually didn't check the box to not register. And so that changed, it affects some of those little issues.
I think we should still blame Ryan anyway, but
I'm sure people will shortly.
Oh. I know that I met with other supervisors here a couple weeks back, and part of the talk was about monies that are going to be received by the various townships and all, and the news media is contacting me, and I simply said, we don't know what we don't know yet. We don't have specification on amounts. We don't even know there are amounts that have been floating around out there, and we don't know yet even some of the strings that might be attached with that. And so I've asked Dan to kind of keep a pulse on that and be listening to when we know something. I'm sure we'll all hear it,
Every community in the state wants to know. So I'm sure as soon as it's out there, we'll all hear together. They want to know details and the amounts because basically the people have been told to expect this. To a lot of communities, you're getting this windfall without any explanation or any restrictions. So, that's causing issues in a lot of communities. When you hear you're getting this large windfall, we don't know if they'll actually get it. We don't know how we'll be able to use it. So.
I would say the mood among our county is one not of jubilance over that. That is, okay, it's coming, but they want to address the larger issue. Why are they, why is this money being issued, and why are we doing this and that? So it's not, they weren't interested from the standpoint going, how much do we get? It's definitely a mood of wow.
We keep hearing more and more restrictions and methods of spending, though. We do hear that.
Yeah.
How when we spend it, restrictions that'll be on what we have to do when we spend it. Particularly Davis Bacon, different rules we'll have to follow, so it will be interesting.
Similar to the tax revenue that you were talking, the statutory tax revenues that you were talking about, how 2020 they decided to change things up and have some essentially grants tied to, or whatever, have money issued that had restrictions.
The state received a lot of money with restrictions of how to spend it. And obviously they wanted unrestricted money, so they shifted. They did a shift, took some of the statutory money normally coming to us. They kept that, they had that unrestricted, and then sent us money restricted. So on the alternative, they could have just kept them all. That wasn't the alternative they chose. So, and we did have additional expenditures that we were able to use it for, that we were able to justify, that we had to buy anyway, so it worked out for us.
It's tough with the principle of that they just printed money.
Right, that's what we were all lamenting there and saying why?
I mean, I guess you could do a lot of roads with $5 million.
But you might not be able to.
But
you might not be able to use it for roads.
Could be infrastructure.
And the
This
cost
would be
will be,
roads. Oh, I'm sorry.
the cost will be significantly more per road.
Yeah.
Referring to Davis Bacon.
Davis Bacon. And the fact is, if you can use it for roads and they send $1 trillion into the market for asphalt, you don't think you're going to see other price increases as well? I mean, you're going to, it's going to be more expensive if everybody can use it for the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Other comments? Question, anything?
Jim, I had great news just before our meeting. I talked to Pam down in Florida, and our son Dan, his wife Mandy, had a baby boy.
Hey.
Congratulations.
Just about 2.5 hours ago. And everyone's healthy and turned out great.
If you see the Schwam family on Facebook, they're cut above looks-wise. I don't know, that must be Pam's side, but
for the Pam's side, yeah.
There came the back end compliment right there. Wait for it.
But it's Jackson James Schwam. Jackson James, and her side of the family is very tall, so it's a light baby but a tall baby. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Real excited.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Supported? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you all very much. Meeting is adjourned.